A year and a half ago, I started remaking Toy Story 2 from the ground up. And since then, I've actually obtained a group of collaborators to help me out, the biggest supporter of which was Kyle, who is our lead artist. We will actually have levels 1, 2, and 3 done by next month's video. But with that being said, how long would it take to finish the rest of this game? Is it like a pretty significant amount of work? Or are there some levels that are really quick? It took us a year just to do level 1. Now, one reason for this is because for level 1, we had to create so many gameplay systems to be able to create this framework to be able to make the game. So level 2 was a bit faster. It took about 3 to 4 months total of part-time work. And level 3 took like 2 weeks. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through every single level of the game and figure out what's new for that specific level, what would have to be added, and guesstimate how long it would take to actually finish the game. Now first, we're going to start with level 4, the construction yard, which is mostly an easy to medium difficulty level to make. There are a couple new enemies, such as the boss, which is the jackhammer, who actually would be fairly easy to make. He's not too complicated. And then there's also the flying robots. And I didn't really realize until now just how early they're introduced into the game. I didn't expect to see them until like level 6 or something. Now for those enemies, the flying robot would most likely be a static mesh, meaning he doesn't have any bones or animations. However, the jackhammer would probably be a skeletal mesh, which would create some animations. Although pretty simple, it would just be his jackhammer part going up and down. That's super easy to do. Now, while we're talking about art for the enemies, let's also talk about the environment art, with the yard itself being full of mostly pretty simple items, some loose wood. There's that shed where you do the paint stuff inside of. None of that's too complicated, but there is the excavator, which is a pretty large asset that would take probably like a week by itself to make, at least, I would think. And then there's the giant building that is being constructed with all the metal girders. The good thing there is it's mostly repeated sizes, so actually that itself wouldn't take too long. On the developer side, I would have to create all of the actual timed events for the movement of these pieces, but again, that's not too crazy. There is also another gameplay mechanic, which is the disc shooter, which you actually need to shoot the jackhammer with. The thing is, it looks like it behaves like a laser, so I'll have to look at it a little bit closer, but that will probably be like super easy to make as well. And finally, I would have to make an update to the pushing system. As of right now, you can only push boxes and things like that a very specific direction. You cannot push them in either direction. This would be used for the color changing puzzle that's in level 4. There are buttons to push in the level. All that's pretty easy to set up with my interaction system. I think overall, this level would probably take us about 2 months to make. The hardest piece to do would probably be a skyline, because you're looking at like a large city in the background, but we can do some fog. It's dark, so we don't have to make it super detailed. And the next level is going to be raining, which means that we can kind of make it start looking like a little bit foggy if we wanted to. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves and start talking about some levels that are extremely difficult to remake, I do just want to mention that this video is sponsored by Brilliant.org. Brilliant helps you become a better thinker and problem solver with thousands of visual interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. With the Brilliant app that makes it easy to learn with fun, hands-on lessons, I've been going through the programming courses to build timeless problem-solving skills, not memorization. Meaning, while I am elevating my knowledge, intuition, and skills as a programmer, I'm also becoming a better thinker and problem solver. I really like that I can learn anywhere while on the go with my busy life, regardless of whether I am diving into a new topic or just doing some practice sessions. To learn for free on Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/level redesign. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description. Brilliant's also given our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. Now we're on to level 5, which is alleys and goalies. And this level would be like a medium difficulty to hard difficulty. I'm not totally sure. One issue is that this level is just so large. It is one of the largest levels in the game. And while there are some repeated assets, such as like the building walls, there's also things like the water flowing area. You need to be able to climb up the side of buildings to get to the clown. There's the rooftop where you actually fight the clown. There's the farmer's market looking area. There's actually a lot to this area. Now, I mentioned a moment ago the clown. That would be one enemy that I have to make, a boss, but he also has very simple behavior, and so he would be very easy for me to make on my side, but it would be an art asset that Kyle has to make, along with all the other art in this level. But there are also two other enemies to fight, such as the plane in a box. The box shoots out a plane every few seconds, and it charges towards you and tries to hit you. That one's easy enough, actually, but then there's the big enemy, who would require a bit more work on his behavior. I think he just charges at you and tries to hit you. I'm also surprised how quick early he is in this. And he's also in like a really difficult spot in this level. It doesn't really make sense. I think it's actually just bad design. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that there is rain in this level. That's all fine. I have an art asset pack for the skybox, and that has a rain and weather system and snow and sandstorms and all that, and so that's easy to implement. It looks pretty good. We would have to update the materials of any objects we make in order to make them look like they can be wet. Now, just two more things on this level. There is a hook shot. This is what you use to actually get up onto the side and eventually the rooftop of buildings to get to that clown boss I was talking about. But on top of that, there's also electricity that travels along zip lines. So this in itself is not too crazy. You have a spline path to follow and you just make an invoke every few seconds. I could make this in like an hour. So how long would level 5 take? That's a good question. I'm gonna say probably like 4 to 5 months. Almost only because of the art. There's a lot of enemies, which are skeletal meshes, which will take, a 1 to 2 weeks each by themselves. There's tons of buildings to make. There's tons of objects to throw around in the scene for storytelling purposes. It would take a little bit. And keep in mind about how art is going to take longer on this level than the actual programming. That's a trend you'll notice as we move forward. Now, level 6, slime time. And this level would be mostly easy. We spent 2 weeks on bombs away. We spent a week making the plane enemy and his bomb that he's going to drop on enemies. And we used some extra assets that we have from level 2. It's kind of a similar thing here where we use level 5 assets and then we throw in a couple more new assets and slime time boss. Now for this one, I think he actually behaves a lot like the jumping enemy, funny enough, where he just tries to jump at you and towards you. I'm pretty sure it's almost the same exact logic, but when he dies, he actually respawns basically and becomes larger. It basically enters a new phase, and I think there's like 4 or 5 phases in this fight. Pretty easy fight, but the design of slime time would be interesting to make. So yeah, I would say slime time would be between 2 weeks to a month at most, depending on how many set dressing assets we actually need to make for that compared to level 5. Level 7, Al's Toy Barn, is probably the hardest level in the game to make, particularly on the art side. Now, as far as programming and development, there's some hover boots. Those are kind of easy to slowly rise buzz up constantly. There are also non-ground pound bounce pads in this level, meaning the trampoline. Now, I might do a thing where you can just jump on it and get a certain height, or you can ground pound on it and get even higher height. That's pretty simple to make because I actually have a current interaction system to determine if Buzz lands on something or ground pounds on something. There are also a lot of scripted events in the level, such as the hula hoops rolling down. I also do need to make a timed raced mission system for collecting an object within a certain amount of time, although that technically would have been in level 4 with the construction yard, so I missed that. And finally, on the programming side, there's the dinosaur mini boss AI, and he just walks close to you and then breathes fire. Very easy fight overall to make. The artwork of it would be pretty easy to do for Kyle, and the animations are simple, so we may not even need an animator for that, but that's just a fraction of what Kyle would have to do for art. This is our highest art compact level in the game. It again is kind of a large level, although mostly full of corridors, but all of those corridors are filled with toys, and each one of those toys would be an actual asset. Now, we could repeat assets, which you'll see in level 8 with like repeated Buzz Lightyear boxes, but it would be a very time-consuming process. I think at our current rate, which we are both working part-time on this project, it would take it would take less than a year. It would take a long time. There's just so much to do. You have that giant window out the front. You have to do an exterior environment. There's just a lot of work to do to it. So how long do I think this level would take? On the developer side, it would be pretty quick. On the art side, I'm thinking between like 8 to 12 months at our current rate. But then we move on to, again, another hard level. which is Owl's Spaceland. Is that the name of it? Which is basically a Buzz Lightyear themed section of the store, which this level still has a ton of new assets. Like Owl's Toy Barn, it has tons of toys that each need their individual boxes made, and there's an arcade and play area, and then the area where you fight the Buzz boss. Now luckily we can reuse the model for Buzz, but we would have to make his cart and then create his AI logic. The AI logic would be a little bit more complicated because it does involve driving and you want to make sure you get that movement looking correct, but it's not too difficult. Another gameplay system we had to make is the claw machine, being able to ground pound to stop a claw moving left and right and then forward and backwards, then eventually grab something if it lands in the right area. That's not too difficult, but it would be an interaction that would at least take a little bit, not super long. Now there also is a section in this level where there's laser spawners that just basically shoot lasers at Buzz from the wall. I think it's inside of the Buzz Lightyear aisles and all the Buzz Lightyears are shooting at Buzz. I think that's the idea. I'm not totally sure. We can't animate that with like actual Buzz Lightyear figures because that would be a little bit too high performance hit. But there would be a big update I need to make for this level, and that is an update to the racing system, which really depends on the AI character being able to race around the ground. So I'd actually have to make a system where it follows a set path. That itself is actually probably easy. And in fact, my racing system may account for just any AI that doesn't depend on touching the ground necessarily, but I'd have to look into it and see. And plus the whole racing system needs an update anyways. Now, I will mention with our current system, these are new mechanics and stuff that I have to make, but I do have other work I do for each level, such as actually implementing everything into the game. Our current system is Kyle makes an object or a model or a texture or anything, he brings it into the project, and then I actually implement it into the level. I'm also doing tons of tests to make sure there's no issues with any old systems that we've made, such as the zip lines. And of course, I'm also doing producer tasks, so making sure that we actually have tasks for every single asset that we would need. Now, how long do I think Owl's Spaceland would take to make? This one's a little difficult. I would say like 8 months at our current workflow. And now we have level 9, which is the Toy Barn Encounter. Level 9 Toy Barn Encounter, which is in like an area where it looks like you should be fighting Buzz Lightyear. I don't know what happened with the bosses in this game. It seems like level 8 and 9 swapped bosses. I'm not sure. You're fighting a giant flying robot that has little capsules that enemies spawn from. Once you cause enough damage to the giant robot, it opens up one of these capsules and you destroy the enemies inside, then you can hurt the boss again. This one is actually very heavy on the programming side and not as heavy on the art side. There's very few assets to make outside the environment. You can kind of make the window a little bit cloudy, and you can also place it inside of either Owl's Toy Barn or Owl's Spaceland to kind of use some of those assets. This entire level would probably take less than a month still, even with all the programming work involved, because making his AI would still be pretty simple. It'd just be setting up the different levels and spawners and things like that. And now we're at level 10, Elevator Hop, which is basically you getting the elevators and taking them up to Owl's penthouse. There's a ton of repeated assets in the area. We would have to make some decals and ways to make the areas look a little bit more distinguished than the original game, because it is a really boring area to look at, honestly. There's also the boss for the robot spider. That would probably take a few weeks to make for both Kyle and I. And there's also a new enemy, the toy snake, whose, again, code base seems to be very similar to the jumping robot. I think they reused a lot of that logic. Now, this would actually be another level that would be a little bit more time consuming for the developer side than the art side, most likely. For example, this is where I was talking about making an update to the electric paths, where they can travel through the air or through the water. I could probably still use a spline path for that. I would just have to make a different kind of a spline, but it'd be very simple to make. I would also have to make a slide. There's a section of the level where you have to slide down a bunch of air ducts in order to beat a token in a race, and if you beat it, then you can collect that token. There is also an actual puzzle in this game, if you want to call it that, and it's basically a color swap puzzle where you have to hit these switches in order to move the levers up and down to correspond to the correct color. And also we do have air vents to push Buzz both up and force him back. Now there is air in level 4 when you blow the balloon, although I'm not sure if that actually affects Buzz or not, so it may or may not be new technically. And there's Elevator Hop. It'd probably be like a medium level difficulty level to remake. Art side, we were looking at a couple months at most probably. Developer side, it'd probably take 2 to 3 months. It wouldn't be very long. So again, it'd probably be about 3 months to remake this level, even though it is a pretty large level overall. And now we're on level 11, which is probably my favorite level in the game, Al's Penthouse, which has a ton of new art. This would be, again, a very heavy art level to make with all kinds of new assets, new environments. You have that window where you can look at the skyline. You have a bathroom and a kitchen area. You have Al's bedroom. You have the display room with all of the other Woody and the Roundup Gang toys and memorabilia. There's a lot to this level, actually. There's also some new enemies and bosses. There's the cowboy boss that you fight inside of the Woody the Roundup Gang room. There's also the vulture that you take down in the level, as well as the bandit. There are also these cannons that shoot, although those are mostly just static meshes that you would rotate to face the player, and then they would shoot cannonballs. That's pretty easy to make. In the bathroom, there is also a mechanic where you have to raise and lower the water levels, and everything gets a little bit buoyant. That would actually probably be a little complicated to make. The buoyancy in level 2 that I made with the rubber duck is like technically fake buoyancy that I kind of cheesed in order to keep high performance, but I don't know if that scales properly. Oh, there's also the train puzzle you have to do where you have to make it swap lanes. I don't really know exactly how you would do that. You would probably swap between different splines, though I'm not totally sure. Now we're going to talk about something that I think would be very difficult for the level. All the track lighting that's in the Woody Roundup Gang room. I don't know how this would work exactly, how you would make this look like it's supposed to. I'd be afraid of performance hit for this with how many track lights there are. Maybe something you could do with Unreal Engine's Mega Lights. I don't know. The game currently uses completely real-time lighting. The performance is really good for the current levels, although it would probably have to switch to baked and mixed lighting for if we did the whole game. So overall, this level would probably be like a medium difficulty art-wise. It's a lot of new art, but it's not as much as some of the other levels. I think it'd probably take us 6 months to make. And now level 12, we get the evil Emperor Zurg, whose boss AI is a little bit odd. He tries to like stay away from you and then he shoots at you and stuff. It's not too crazy, but it is not like anything else in the game, I don't think. As far as art assets, we could reuse some of the master materials that we would make for the elevator level, and then it would also be Zurg. So this level would probably take a couple of weeks to make. And now we're on the last 3 levels of the game. We're in Airport Infiltration, which is inside of the airport terminal. This level is very large, but it does reuse tons and tons of assets. There's tons of open space. And so there's not really as many art assets as you would think, although there are some very large pieces, specifically for the room with like what looks like a rocket ship. I don't know what's going on there. There's also Stinky Pete, who's in level 13 of this game. I'm guessing he made you fight him here because there is technically a fight that happens on the conveyors in the movie, but I don't know. It's just odd. Speaking of conveyors, that's a new mechanic in this level. It's conveyor belts. I think conveyor belts are mostly easy to make. You basically make the art asset of a moving texture to move around, and when you're on this portion of that object, the character is moved. So when you look at the missions that need to be made, the dialogue, all that, I mean, it's just an easy level to make on a programming side. You know, like if I had the assets, I could remake this pretty quickly myself. It'd probably be like a month, right? However, the art is a different story. It'd probably be a few months for the art alone. There are just a lot of large assets that are in level that would need to be made. And large assets are always a difficulty with this game because then you're dealing with texture resolution issues. But again, not too hard of a level. I'd probably give it like medium difficulty. But now we're on to level 14, Tarmac Trouble. This again is a very large level. I mean, in the PS1 version, you can't even see most of the assets until you get just like a few feet away from them, really. However, most of that is empty space, and so you're dealing with the ground that you have to make with actual concrete and gravel and cement and all that stuff. It's not very difficult. There are a few large assets. There's a helicopter that has to be made. There's a giant airplane that has to be made that you have to be able to have Buzz walk on that just spins around in circles. I would also say the level layout of this doesn't make sense. There's nowhere for the plane to actually leave, and so I don't know how that works. Now, I would have to update the racing system again for this level to add special rules. For example, in this race, you're not allowed to jump or else it cancels the race. There's also a light puzzle, but I'm pretty sure you can do it in like 2 moves very easily on accident. And so it's way easier than it looks like it should be. That's kind of odd. There's also a new boss, the blacksmith, who is a big chunky guy. His AI seems easy to make. His model is probably not too difficult, especially to make him look like a toy. I'd go medium difficulty to make, and I'd probably say it'd be like 4 months. It would not be very long at all. And now, finally, we're on level 15, Prospector Showdown. This has got to be the hardest level in the game to make, right? There's Woody and Jesse that have to be made. Yeah, this level would take like probably less than 2 weeks. You're reusing everything in the game. You're making 2 new models of characters, and then what's it called, a fuselage? The interior of the cargo bay for a ship, an airplane. What am I on about? But yeah, very easy level to make. It'd actually probably be, unironically, the easiest level in this game if everything else was already done, because you're reusing everything except for 3 models. This level sucks. What a terrible way to end this game. But there you go. That's how long it'd take to make everything. Now, I will admit, we're probably not going to finish this game. You know, I mentioned in my season 1 finale of this remake that the game doesn't have to be done to be really proud of what we made. And we do want to move on to other things. Games that we can actually release even though they are tied to IPs, because certain IP holders are a little more generous. So there you go. Let me know what you think. What is your favorite level from this game? Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it, and it really helps with any costs that the channel may incur with server fees and software fees and things like that. But anyways, thank y'all so much for watching. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe, and y'all take care now.